Hello, hello, hello. We're streaming live once again. Attendees in the queue are being let in across Canada and worldwide. Welcome to What's Up Wednesday. My name is Craig Mackay, your host. Happy New Year. I hope everyone has a fantabulous 2023. I hope it's a year of growth, personal, internal, and external. I hope it's a year of new experiences, new friends, and new business. I hope it's a year of openness and honesty. Okay, all right, I'm taking it too far. I got it. But it can be a year of positive growth. And our guest speaker today is going to help in that regard with his presentation on adapting relationship building for the virtual world. Before we delve into this, thanks again for joining us. We have a great lineup of guests this winter that will take us right into the spring and summer. In February, guest speaker Ron Schwartz will discuss data science strategies for consultants. What's new in data science? How to help drive adoption and excellence with more and better data science, how to plan and execute on data investments and how to get a return on them. In March, once again, we are celebrating National Women's Month. Our guest host will be Jennifer Smith with various women of consulting. And in April, I hope to have a show on the Management Consulting Book of Knowledge. It's a very secret book. And an update on the essentials of management consulting. In May, I hope to have a show on how sports in business and the business of sports is of interest to management consultants and coaching experts. What's Up Wednesday, the digital series, is brought to you by the Institute of Certified Management Consultants of Ontario in cooperation with FCMC Canada. We've made a commitment to be here every month on the second Wednesday of each month. So please save a spot for us in your calendar and spread the news, invite a guest. There are 2 in-person events coming up, by the way, here in January. I hope you can join us at one of these events. GTA Celebration for Awards Night will be Thursday, January 19th, and in Eastern Ontario, the celebration of Awards Night will be on Thursday, January 26th. Sign up, get registered, come on out in person. Be nice to see you. If you're a guest today, welcome to the show. If you're a member, you should think about renewing. There are many benefits, such as belonging to an international network of management consultants that can open doors to a global consulting practice and get you official approval to work in the USA. There's also our MAS, Management Advisory Service, which is funded by the NRC and IRAP, as well as access to excellent liability and cybersecurity insurance, not to mention free entry to this show. Yes, we now have a registration fee for all our guests. You know, inflation hits you wherever you go. If you are a member and you have not renewed for 2023, please do so at your earliest convenience. Note, there is no inflation on that amount. I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Here in Ottawa, I am grateful to the Algonquin people. In Eastern Ontario and the territory covered by the Upper Canada Treaties, respectfully, the traditional territory of the Iroquois, Mohawks, St. Lawrence Iroquois, and Huron-Wendat. I hope that we can all continue or try to be active partners with our Indigenous allies across Canada, supporting their crucial work on the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, environmental degradation due to resource development policies, and the need for major public investments in Indigenous education, healthcare, social services, water infrastructure, and housing. You know, I've used the word hope a lot in this intro. It's early in the new year, so hope is still strong. For this next presentation, I don't have to hope at all, because I know you will enjoy it and will have some great takeaways. I can feel Michael getting in ready to engage us already. As usual, please remain on mute and send your questions via the chat. I will monitor the chat and try to post the questions during the Q&A period in about 35 minutes from now. This event will be recorded and the PDF of the deck will be available to those registered for this event. Our guest speaker today is Michael Hughes. He really needs no intro, but I'll do a short one. Building on his successful 23-year corporate career years, Michael Hughes has invested the last 21 plus years relentlessly researching networking as a business strategy. He is recognized as an international networking and relationship management expert. Hence, that's why we call him a guru. He now coaches businesses, corporate and sales professionals on how to achieve better results by building better relationships. His client list includes names like the Public Service Commission of Canada, Financial Management Institute, Dell, Ottawa Senators, Sports and Entertainment, University of Ottawa Telfer Program, and the Conference Board of Canada, just to mention a few. I first met Michael when he came to one of our Ottawa Executive Association meetings as a guest speaker, showing us how to use LinkedIn to expand our network. And that was over 10 years ago. A few things have changed in that time, but his expertise in that area has just grown in leaps and bounds. And that is why I'm so happy to welcome Michael Hughes here today. You're on, buddy.
Thanks, Craig. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's program. I'm thrilled to be here. It's amazing how, when you look back on the connections you make as you go through life, that Craig and I have been connected for over the last 10 years, and he sees great value in what I have to offer. But what I want to try and do today is I want to give you an opportunity to reflect. I want to challenge you a little bit on your thinking about a number of things, and I want to motivate you to do some things differently today and tomorrow than you did yesterday to achieve the results that you want and need. So let's get started. First, I'd like to start with a fable. A long, long time ago, in a land far, far away, this is how people used to network. You can see these people are all standing around. There's a number of groups having a chat, and you can see up in the top left-hand corner, there's a doorway there, and pretty soon they're going to go in there and have a meal, and there'll be a speaker that they'll listen to in the morning. And this is how life was evolving, right? We all understood what networking was. We knew the rules of engagement. We understood the process. There was a structure there. Everything was going great. And it's where I based the majority of my research in the last 20 to 25 years. And it's been amazing how, in my evolution as a subject matter expert around networking and relationship management, that I've moved from networking as a tactic, which is how many people think about networking, to networking as a strategy that could impact my business, my career, and my life, to essentially networking as a catalyst and a relationship igniter and relationship accelerator. This is networking 1.0. This is how we knew networking until March 2020. And that's when life completely changed for all of us, didn't it? Overnight, everything changed. And over the last almost 3 years, it's been just a SeaWorld of change. And you know what? Each and every one of us are forever changed now, because in those 3 years, if you think in terms of what we lived through, the isolation, the uncertainty, the anxiety, it had a tremendous impact on us. But you got to think in terms of a guy like me. Like 98% of my business was face-to-face, 60% of my business was in the US, and all of a sudden that door slammed shut. And I said to myself, what am I going to do? Shut the business down? Have people stopped networking? And I said, no, they haven't. People hadn't stopped networking. They just transitioned to an environment better suited to how life was working. And this is what I call networking 2.0. It's amazing. It's where we transition from a complete face-to-face environment to network and build relationships to a completely virtual environment where technology-based communication drove what we did. Now we're steadily moving forward, but it's absolutely amazing what's transpiring in both our minds and in our skill sets as far as how we network and build relationships. See, I talk about this particular era in the networking world as technology is the great equalizer. We were forced to embrace technology, whether that's email, whether that's social networks, whether that's virtual conferencing and attending meetings like we are today to amazingly do that. So now we've evolved to what I'm calling networking 3.0. It's a new environment. It's amazing what's happening now and how we're slowly evolving into an entirely new world of relationship building and networking. So where am I coming from with all this? Well, first of all, let me talk about what we all know is the benefits of a virtual world. Now, listen, we all know what the drawbacks were, right? I mean, it's amazing. The isolation that we were forced to deal with forced us to think more. The uncertainty we dealt with forced us to adapt. And the anxiety that we felt drove us into action. And even though there were a tremendous amount of negative issues around that, there are some benefits that came out of that. I mean, the biggest one is the whole working from home piece. But in addition to that, you can think about the convenience that we all embraced. You can think in terms of life balance that has changed for all of us, the productivity improvements that a virtual world has done, and the time improvements. I mean, little things like pre-COVID, what would happen is if you met someone online and you said, let's get together, you would both drive somewhere and sit down in a restaurant and have a meal, right? And yet, or in COVID, we couldn't do that. And in fact, many of us have continued to do that. I mean, when somebody connects with me and wants to have a meal, I might think twice and say, well, you know what, is it worth 2.5 hours of my time? Or would I be better suited just to set up a Zoom meeting so that we can take 30 to 45 minutes and talk about what we need to? So it's amazing what this has done. And the piece is, this is not going away. That's the biggest emphasis I want to give you today, is that the massive changes that we've all felt and dealt with over the last almost 3 years are here and are staying with us. And one of the biggest change pieces has been the use of technology as a relationship building resource. It's amazing. And I want to help you embrace this more. I want to help you leverage it better. And I want to help you utilize it more effectively to be able to build your business or to create more success in your life. Now, you know, there's no question that we're easing out of the pandemic. And face-to-face meetings are coming. Craig just talks about a face-to-face meeting you're having here in Ottawa at the end of January. But I want to remind you that networking is now just a face-to-face piece. It is an option as opposed to the option. It can enhance and drive and build relationships. But on the other side of that same coin, there's an ability and an awareness of utilizing the current environment and the technology that we've become so adept with over the last almost 3 years to work in our favor. So, you know, just as I move this presentation forward, I want to share with you, you know, a little something that someone told me a long time ago. I remember sitting with one of my mentors when I was in the corporate world, and he told me, he said, Michael, success in business and in life is all about relationships. And I know every professional I speak to, when we start talking about this kind of stuff, agrees with that particular statement, that success in business life is all about relationships. And I must tell you, in my evolution as a subject matter expert around networking, I've evolved from seeing it as an activity that we do and a strategy that we're involved with, to the ultimate premise of what networking is designed to do, and that's ignite and accelerate relationships. Because every time I start talking about the fact that the last 10 plus years, most of my involvement and investment around networking, business development, all that has been in relationship management, relationship development. And I got to tell you, if you really think about it, look around, there is very little out there that talks to the relationship piece. And every time I start talking about relationships, relationship building, and talking about, you know, I have a course and a workshop on that, people start to look at me like I'm talking about couples therapy, because that's how we tend to think of the relationship piece. But essentially, when you talk about a business premise, relationships are the most important thing we have. Now, when I start moving in this direction, people are saying, wait a minute now, Michael, I understand relationships. I mean, there's a basic premise there, but you're a networking guy. How do the two fit together? Well, let me share with you my definition of networking that may be a little different than you thought before you came onto the program. See, my definition of networking is that it's the intentional process of creating and developing relationships from initial contact to ultimate outcome. Networking is the intentional process of creating and developing relationships that always start with an initial contact and moves toward an ultimate outcome. See, the fallacy of going to an event and sitting down with someone and having a 30-second to 3-minute conversation and presuming that person will buy from you, will refer you, or do business with you is just that. I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And networking's true purpose, its fundamental premise, is to bring two individuals together and act as a catalyst for the powerful relationships that are the basis for success in business and in life. Let me repeat that, just to make sure that you understand it properly. Networking's true purpose is to bring two individuals together and act as the catalyst for the powerful relationships that are the basis for success in business and in life. Now, if you don't believe me, I just want you to I want you to take 15 to 30 seconds here, and I want you to think in terms of the 2 or 3 highest value relationships in your life right now. Could be someone you deeply respect. Could be someone you do business with. It could be someone who's been in your life for a long time. And let me ask you, those deep, meaningful, powerful relationships, did they happen overnight? Well, of course not. And if you and I could sit down over a coffee or something cold and frothy and talk about those relationships and go back in time, isn't it true that there was some point where you connected with them? Maybe you went to an event and you met them and the relationship evolved from there. Maybe they came and worked in your company, in your department. And as you got to know them better, they evolved and grew. Maybe it's someone that you met at your child's leisure activity, whether that's softball or hockey or ringette. And as you got to know them better. So you see, my premise, my philosophy, and my methodology around networking is it always starts with creating relationships, creating and then developing a relationship. It's a 2-part process. Then there is a process there. I call it the social process, where you connect with someone and you actively build that relationship. And the one word in that definition that if you've written down, I want you to think about and underline is the word intentional. Because my experience has been too many of us take relationships for granted. We tell ourselves, I'm so lucky I met her. And man, it was so serendipitous that you and I got together. And that's just not true. Because the universe brings into your life all the resources that you want and need. And there's a process there that is ignited every time you meet someone or connect with them online. That we have a responsibility to move forward, to have that relationship evolve and grow. Now, as you can see, I've got the common thread here is the relationship piece. And I want to talk to you a little bit about relationships and how they work and how they are just for a little bit before I move on here to the main thrust of the content. So first, let me talk about what I call the relationship factor. And this is a premise. This is a premise and a reality that for all intents and purposes, relationships are the foundation of the human condition. Think about it. You are the accumulation of all the people in your life, all the people around you. Your ego relates to the relationships you have, your self-worth, your self-esteem. You see, connecting with people, building relationships, and being with others is part of our DNA. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, as we evolved as beings, we became aware there was tremendous value in coming together as a group, as a community, for protection, for productivity, and yes, procreation. But the underlying factor here is that we are geared, we are made to connect with people and build relationships. The second thing is when we think in terms of relationships, and I want you to think in terms now of the 2 to 3 highest value relationships in your life that you just talked about a minute ago. And we think in terms of those relationships with respect to where we are today as a static piece, how do we relate to them? But we miss the point of the evolution of that relationship and where it's going. It's a process versus an activity that has a start point, that ebbs and flows and grows and drops, sometimes drops off based on where we are. And the third piece is it's a skill-based activity. Now, the good news for all of you is that you're already good at this. No one achieves the level of success that you have in your life or in your career or in your business without being good at this. But the more you can become aware of relationships and how they work and how to grow them and drive them and leverage them, the more success you'll have. Now, I'm not talking about manipulating people. I'm not talking about taking advantage of people. I'm talking about helping a process happen easier, better, and faster for both you and the other person. And the skill-based component is either intrinsic. You've either become aware of this as part of your evolution as a human being, or it's extrinsic. You've watched other people and you've learned what they did. You took a course that dealt on that. So essentially, my starting point for today's content and where we sit today in the massive sea change that we're going through is that relationships were never more important and can have even more impact than they ever have. So how do we drive, how do relationships happen? How do they grow? How do they move? And so let me take a minute and just talk about this. There are three fundamental factors that drive the relationship process. You're involved with them all the time, every single day, with everyone that you meet and everyone that you know. You know, relationships are holistic, right? They transcend the professional and the personal. How many times have you had someone in your personal life have an impact on your professional career? How many times has someone in your professional life had an impact on your personal life? It's absolutely amazing. And today, with the hybrid environment that we're working with, it's imperative to understand how we can utilize these drivers to accelerate the process from a number of different areas, issues, and resources. So here are the three drivers that fundamentally manage, maximize the relationship process. The first one is trust. Trust is fundamental to every relationship in your life. Think in terms of those 2 or 3 high-value relationships I asked you to think about. And isn't there an incredible basis of trust? Now, remember, everything you do and everything you say either adds trust or takes away trust from a relationship. And I mean, the world is littered with people who, in a nanosecond, have destroyed all the trust that they built over years. Now, there's 2 kinds of trust, by the way. I did a bunch of research on this. There's 2 kinds of trust. There's professional trust, and professional trust is a career experience and expertise that you acquire. It's in the alphabet soup behind your name. And believe it or not, that's the easy trust. The harder trust is personal trust. And personal trust is earned and acquired on a daily basis in every interaction, in every conversation, every exchange you have with another person. It's something that needs to be top of mind every time you interact with someone. Yes, face-to-face, but today, as much online as face-to-face. Incorporating and insinuating trust building and trust management, trust acceleration in every exchange you have with someone. Now, relationships are based on trust, but they're built on value. Now, value is a two-sided coin. There's what I call internal value, that's the value we have, and external value, that's the value others have or others need. And so part of the process here in the relationship, developing relationships, specifically in a professional context, is to ensure that as you build trust with someone, that you can assess value, that you can elicit value, and that you can share value as it's necessary. Because let me tell you, unless and until that other person, whether you meet them face-to-face or online, unless and until they can see and establish how your value can have benefit to them in their situation, nothing will happen. So relationships are based on trust, they're built on value, and they're validated by contribution. There is nothing more powerful than a sincere, tangible contribution to someone else. So you can see how these 3 layers build on one another as you connect with someone, as you communicate, interact with them to build that relationship. And so it works top to bottom, and it also works bottom up, right? Because when you get a good idea, how to save money, how to save time, who do you want to share it with? You want to share it with all those wonderful people you know, right? And how about if those people that you know well, those high-value relationships, if they have a problem, who do you want them to come to first? Us, right? And every time they do, and you can make a contribution to them, it enhances the value you have, and it adds to the trust factor. Now, you know, in pre-COVID times, these were the 3 drivers that I had. But since COVID, I mean, I've been looking at this and I've interacted with a number of people who said, Michael, when I connect with someone online, I don't have any of this. So where do I start? So I believe there's now a fourth driver. There's now a fourth driver for us to be able to build relationships, and that's context. Because online, using technology-based communication, as you connect with someone, what happens is you can use context to gel together with them. Malcolm Gladwell in his book Blink talks about context as being the single most powerful connection piece and trust building piece for people. So those are the primary pieces behind this. So into all this, how does all this interact? Well, all this interacts through communication, right? Because you connect with people, and the communication quality and level you have with them drives the relationship. But we have a communication conundrum right now. The communication conundrum is that there are four types of communication: verbal, nonverbal, written, and visual, right? Verbal, nonverbal, visual, written, and visual. Now, in pre-COVID times, 99% of communication was verbal, nonverbal, right? You went to an event, you could look somebody in the eye, you could look their visual cues, you could watch their body language, get everything going. But when COVID hit, everything changed 180 degrees. And our primary and only communication vehicle was technology-based communication. It was amazing. So what's happened is we have completely changed how communication works. Because when it comes to technology-based communication, written communication, it was primarily information-based. We would send people an email message so that we could transfer information with them, send them the proposal, share the information with them. And now that technology-based communication has expanded so that it includes a relationship building component that many people miss. Now, part of the problem with that is when it comes to technology-based communication, which we are still using today. By the way, I want you to know that over 80% of communication today is technology-based. It's absolutely amazing. But the constraints are, first of all, with technology-based communication in many cases, is a lack of control, because the other person gets to choose whether or not they're going to continue the exchange with you. That's why so many people get ghosted. And the other piece is competence. There's a competence around technology-based communication. There's a new mindset and different skills required now to communicate so that you can utilize technology-based communication more effectively to build relationships. And the final piece is that the objective of technology-based communication has changed drastically. It is no longer a one-way resource, a one-way vehicle. It's now an opportunity to be able to use technology-based communication as a means to an end, as a resource to build relationships. So let's talk about networking in a brave new world. And there are four pieces I want to talk to you about. Number one is face-to-face, which is coming back now. Second one is email, probably the single most common communication vehicle for all of us, bar none. I want to talk to you about social networks, and I want to talk to you about video conferencing. So let me share each of these individually, and then, if there's something in there you have a question with, we can address that at the end of the program. So let's talk about face-to-face. Number one, face-to-face is coming back. It's evolving now, but it's different. It's different. Why? Well, because we're all still a little careful. I call it the residual pandemic mindset. We're all a little more careful. Associations, organizations are telling me that they're not getting the volume of people they get before, because some people have looked at that virtual piece and say, I'm okay here, I want to stay here. Other people say, I'm not sure I want to do. So it's the same, but it's different. And the other piece is that I'm getting more from many people is they want the human contact. There's an energy and enthusiasm about meeting people face to face that people really get off on. Really, it drives them. And this is the one primary message I got with people. So I want to encourage you in 2023 that even though you have a certain amount of discomfort around this, that to get out there, because what will happen is you will connect with people and you will feel better about it. That's what people tell me. I wasn't sure about going, but I forced myself to go. And you know what? It was so great being out there meeting with people. So I wanna help you understand that things are going. Now, there are some psychological hiccups, okay, that we have to, this is, the whole reality piece that we have to deal with. Number one is that there are things like COVID that are still out there. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can tell you family members, friends, business colleagues, whatever, who have developed COVID over the last, month or so, or 2 months. It's everywhere. Now, it's not as bad as it was. And some people just say they can't do it. My suggestion is that if you're uncomfortable, go wear a mask. Wear a mask. I mean, those are the things that you want to do. So face-to-face is resurging. It will take some time. I want to encourage you to get out there, but do it with your level of comfort. Now I want to talk about what I consider to be the single biggest piece around this evolving out of the, let's say, a post-pandemic environment. The single most powerful skill, the single most important skill set for you to develop is how to use email communication more effectively. Number one, email communication's objective has changed. It is no longer simply a one-way communication that you send to people. What happens with many professionals is they continue to see email communication as simply a one-way vehicle. The important piece to understand is that it's a means to an end. If you can take every email communication you have and you can immerse that into a message that acts as a relationship builder at the same time, using trust, value, contribution, and context as part of the messaging, you will utilize it to drive and reinforce relationships more than ever. So the objective of technology-based communication has changed dramatically. The second thing is the quality of your communication dictates the quality of your relationship. Remember, every technology-based communication you send, whether it's text, email, whether it's part of a social media network or an internet message, is a reflection of your character and your professionalism. People will look at you and will look at the message you're sending and will relate your professionalism and competency as a result around it. Number three is the context. The context of your messaging will determine whether or not that message is replied to, and it deals with the value premise of your message. How is your message contributing value to that other person? And finally, it's in seeing email communication more as a relationship-focused tool, resource than ever before. I can't emphasize that enough. So I want to delve into this just a little bit further. So let's talk about online communication basics, okay? And the reason why I'm doing this is because so many professionals that I've interacted with have demonstrated to me that they don't have an appreciation for the impact that their technology-based communication has today and will in the future. So the number one thing he's talking about is spelling, grammar, punctuation, is making sure that you do that. And there's sentence structure. Simple things like spelling, grammar, and sentence structure are extremely important. So my suggestion to you is to be your own English teacher. Now, before I move forward, let me ask you, how many of you were looking at that first bullet and looked at the last word there, and in your inside voice were saying to yourself, wow, this guy didn't check his spell check very well. I mean, it can't be too professional if you would allow a spelling error like this to go through. See, we all think the same. The quality of your communication dictates the quality of your relationship. And it's incredible how a little piece like this can have a negative impact in a person's mind about you, your character, your professionalism, and your integrity. The third one is a bias for brevity. If you go back and read your own emails over the last 30 days, you will be amazed at how long, involved, complicated, overly structured they are, because that's been our history with technology-based communication. My suggestion to you is to change your mindset around that, to see technology-based communication as a relationship builder, utilizing it to move things forward. Write a message, an email message to someone, leave it for 5 minutes, come back and take 30% of it. You can do that. One of the things I did last year was I read a book. I read a book called On Writing Well by Adam Zimzer, and it's the Bible of writing for nonfiction writers. It's an amazing thing. He says it's not the writing that matters, it's the rewriting. I mean, you consider the impact that your messaging can have, positive or negative. It may be worth your while to review more often what you're writing. And the last thing is to make sure that your communication is humanized. What do I mean by humanized? I mean, it's about being transparent. It's about being sincere. It's about sharing yourself as a human being, because the words you use matter. They really do. And here's some examples here. Right? Talk about share, contribute, support, help, add, invest, give, value, trust, serve, assist, privilege, aid, participate, love. I had a guy tell me one time, he said, you don't actually use the word love, do you, in an email message? I said, well, if I was having a conversation with someone, and I said, geez, I'd love to get together and have a coffee with you. I wouldn't think twice of doing it verbally. Why wouldn't I want to use it in an email message? The words you use matter. They can project emotion. They can project sincerity. They can project transparency. They can project integrity. So that's my overall message with that. So now, just before I go on, I want to ask you just a quick question. I'm going to ask Sandra maybe to activate. I put a little poll in here, just to have a look at quickly. So rate your online communication, okay? That as we're talking about this and you've thought about it a bit, it's now one of my primary relationship building skills. Moderate, I use it to enhance my relationship building, but not enough. Low, I use online communication mostly to share info. I hadn't thought about this. Now remember, this is anonymous. Nobody will know. So here we are, 44% of people so far are rated high, and 15 moderate, and 6 low. And there's a couple of people that hadn't even thought of that. So I want to encourage you to think in terms of the information I've shared today and how it applies to you in your business and even your life to be able to use it more effectively. And here's the results. Okay. All right. So now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what I call maximizing online networks for fun and profits. And I got to tell you that online networks now are bloated. I mean, everybody's there. And it's easy for a lot of people to say, well, you know what, I'm really not going to get involved in this all that much anymore, or to say it's just not worth my while. Or I'm going to go out and spend $10,000 on a specialist or an expert to kind of run it all for me. Here's my message to you. I really believe online networks have potential to support us even more today than ever before if they're used effectively. The biggest issue I find with professionals is that they don't understand how to manage a program to be able to utilize these resources more effectively. And there's no question, the last almost 3 years, this is where we've lived. And I mean, there's all kinds of them out there. And I mean, I always talk about what I call the big three. LinkedIn, which I call the ambassador's ball, formal professionals, there's a protocol there to use. Facebook, which I call the weekend house party. Loosey-goosey, I mean, the conversations can go from professional to personable to abrasive to anything. And then Twitter, which I consider to be networking at 100 miles an hour, networking online 100 miles an hour. Now, there's a bunch of others that are underneath that, but for many, if not most professionals, those three, and especially LinkedIn, is where we live. So let me share with you what I call a 5-step program to maximize online networks. Now the case study here is around LinkedIn, and it's what I've been working on over the last 10 years, because as Craig mentioned, I mean, I developed a program around, I called it Making Money with LinkedIn over 10 years ago. And I refined it the last 2 years because it was all we had. So let me give you these 5 steps that you may want to think about and apply as you move forward. Number 1 is what I call clarity. And clarity is about 3 things. It's about your purpose, it's about a plan, and it's about your profile. Your purpose is, what are you doing there? What do you want to accomplish there? Because your purpose will drive your involvement and investment. Second one is plan. What's your plan? We're the first of the year. What do we want to accomplish with a social network like LinkedIn over the next 12 months? Never mind next 12 months. How about the next 90 days? Invest in next. What do you want? You want to increase your number of contacts. Do you want to share value? Do you want to promote products? Do you want to increase your visibility? And the third one is your profile. And you know, again, people misunderstand the profile piece because initially LinkedIn was a recruiting site. And so many people still think that establishing your profile like a CV is the way to do it. It's not. It's a marketing vehicle. It's your online avatar. Do you know anybody that searches your name on Google? The first or second thing that will come up is your LinkedIn profile. Now there's all kinds of courses you can take around, to develop your profile. I've got, a big 5 that I tell people. First of all, make sure your headline refers to the value that you represent and the target market that you want to do it. Why? Because that's the first thing people see. Many times it's the only thing they see. Your picture. Make sure it's a professional headshot. Not you with the Eiffel Tower, not you with a goat. You want it to represent the value and professionalism that you would do. Third one is your current role. Your current role. Why? Because that's what people will relate to. And again, your current role should relate to the value that you bring and the target market that you do business with. Fourth one is your connections. Why? Because online size matters, okay? If you ever looked at someone that's got 27 connections, look at somebody else that's got 500, you say, oh, he's connected. And then the last piece is your summary. Now, I just want to tell you about the summary because most people don't utilize a summary effectively. If you go to your profile, you'll see it only shows 2 lines and then you have to click to see more. The most important thing is to have a complete message about your value and target market in that 2 lines, because 90% of the cases, people won't click on the rest. So the first step is your clarity. The second thing is your courage, and that's being involved. Being involved. I still get people that say to me, Michael, I have somebody that just invited me to connect. Should I respond? Well, if you're at a networking event, somebody introduces themselves to you, would you just walk away? Now, what happens? If somebody invites you to connect, what's the first thing you do? You go to their profile. That's why the profile is so important. And then when you look at their profile, and if they're local, if they're professional, what do? Well, you invite them to connect, right? I used to do that. And what happens next? Absolutely nothing. So I decided what I wanted to do. I wanted to change that because I said people don't connect with me by accident. So I said I want to find out why. So here's what I started sending you. When someone would invite me to connect, I would check their profile like everyone else. If I decided to connect, I would send them this message. Hi, Craig. Thanks for reaching out. Honored to be part of your LinkedIn network. Really curious about why you chose to connect with me. Now, I have to tell you, I was amazed at the response I got. Yeah, hi, Craig. Thanks for reaching out. Honored to be part of your LinkedIn network. Really curious about why you chose to connect with me. So that's the first piece, is being involved. The second courage piece is, if you're in business and you have value to share with people, why don't you start sharing it with it online? Do the little post thing. It doesn't need to be, people are enamored with video today. And yes, video is great. If you're comfortable with it, do it. But here's the reality. There's a survey I read a little while ago that said that video is watched less than long text content. Long text content is viewed less than short content. Because you see, online people don't read, they scan. So start projecting yourself, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time and doesn't have to be involved. So be courageous. Third one is create engagement. This is about relationships, right? So if someone reaches out to you to connect and you send that little message that I did, use technology-based communication. It's a pendulum. Rather than sending them a whole long balloon message, just send them a little response. Get that pendulum swinging to a point where you can say, geez, You sound really interesting. Love to have a quick chat or Zoom call with you. It's amazing how that happens. Number 4 is commitment. If you met someone at a networking event that you thought had potential for you or your business or your life, how long would you invest in them? You would follow up with them online. You would send them an email. You would meet with them for lunch. You would go and see them at their business. Unless you're prepared to commit for 90 days with the people that you connect with, you shouldn't even be connecting. And the last one is collaboration. Collaboration is about connecting with people and building a connection and contact with them. It's a peer-to-peer connection network. And as long as you do that, meet fewer people and connect with them better, what will happen is you'll have better results. Now, the last piece I wanted to throw in here was video conference communication, because I'm hearing a lot about, Zoom fatigue and all of that. And my message to all of you is get over it. This is here to stay. Whether it's one-on-one calls you have with prospects, clients, colleagues, or connections you have, this is here to stay. Maybe not for you, but for the majority of people. So how can you make the most of it? First of all, be there. Guy told me one time, if you're going to be there, be there. So what do I mean by that? Come with a positive attitude, bring enthusiasm, and be visible. Turn your video on. Let people see you. And be smiling, be involved. The second thing is be reachable. It amazes me how people go on online networks and don't even have leave their contact information. Rather than your name, you may want to put your email address so people can contact you, or insert it into the chat so people can reach you. Third one is be brave. Be brave, participate. Reach out to people in a private chat. Somebody says something cool, tell them about it. And reach out to people after. That's what it's all about. And the last one is be collaborative. Look to other professionals, not to try and sell them stuff, but to build relationships with them. So, okay, here's the second last thing I want to share with you here. Give you what I call a virtual marketing plan, if you will, just based on what I've shared with you today and what I personally feel and what works for you. Number 1, expand your perspective on face-to-face networking. It's there, invest in it, but don't lose sight of the fact that the virtual world is still working well if you have a new mindset and you build those technology-based skills. Increase your email, social network communication skills. I believe this is the single most important skill set for professionals today, specifically in the service world like we are. Third one is implement a social network strategy. Get involved in social network to the extent that you're utilizing it to leverage the value that you want in the target markets you want, and do it over a consistent period of time. Number 4, leverage the virtual meeting environment. Leverage it more often, leverage it better. The more comfortable you are with it, the more comfortable others will be when they come on with you. And last one, use a structure to manage and maximize relationships. And yes, I know everybody has CRM and that, but I'm telling you, the majority of my business come from what I call the 5% that matter. 5 to 10% of people I meet, and I meet a lot of people. 5 to 10% of those people represent the majority of my business and my success. It's the same for you. So I'm going to encourage you to have a separate little spreadsheet around those high-value relationships you can make. Okay, so I don't want to outlive my welcome here. I'm just coming up on 45 minutes. And I was thinking as I was developing this program, what could I bring that would offer extra value to you that you can meditate? I mean, I've given you like a mile a minute stuff here with the limited amount of time I have. So let me tell you what I've done. About halfway through the pandemic, I developed a resource called Online Networking Business Building ebook. It's 35 pages. There's all kinds of step-by-step instructions and templates and scripts and self-assessment. That little script I gave you when someone invites me to connect is in there. It includes proven strategies and a practical structure to consistently build online relationships. Now, all this material is just as applicable on social networks, via email, and via text if you want. I just want to offer to you as a value-added resource. All you have to do is send me an email, info@networkingforresults.com with ebook in the subject line, and I'll send you a copy of this book. This isn't a bait and switch thing. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. I just want to let you know this is there for you if you want it. I'm also going to put my email address in the chat room here. So having said that, Craig, I'm going to turn this back over to you and just like to find out, are there any questions from anyone?
Fantastic, Michael. Thank you so much. I love the fact that, you ended with that marketing plan, which really is a takeaway action step outline for all of us, right? So those are your 5 takeaways, folks, as far as a marketing plan and what you need to do to expand your relationship building efforts across the virtual world. What's kind of cool is, Michael, you might have noticed while you were talking that a lot of people were sharing their LinkedIn URLs, right? Which was great. So, enhancing our connectivity here with everyone. I love it. Here's a question first that came up for me, and maybe you can a little bit of repeat, but explain that communication conundrum. Just want to, what is that when somebody's afraid to really be honest? Like, what is that conundrum again?
The communication right here. Right? There's no reason why we can't go back, right? Who says you can't go back? Who says you can't go back? Who says?
Well, I'm not going back to 2020.
Here we are. Conundrum. It's around because the issue is we're dealing with a different type of communication now. Remember, there's four types of communication: verbal, nonverbal, written, and visual, right?
Yeah.
And pre-COVID, it was verbal, nonverbal. That's how we worked, right? But once COVID hit, we transferred to completely written, which was foreign to many people. It's a whole new skill set, different way of thinking. The second thing is, because now we're dealing more in technology-based communication, Craig, many professionals really are not using it effectively, and so they're not projecting the right sense of professionalism. They're not enhancing their character with people using the online communication level that they're using and quality that they're using. So people aren't responding, and it's a lack of confidence. There's a lack of confidence around using technology-based communication as a relationship building resource. And then the last one is it's understanding that technology-based communication, written communication, is no longer just a one-way vehicle, because that's how we saw it. Most professionals don't think about it and even won't admit it, but in most cases, especially in technology-related fields, people have used written communication to drive information to others. And there's a need to change that thinking and to develop new skill sets to understand that that communication can and needs to involve the relationship drivers to build more trust, to elicit or deliver value, and find new ways to contribute to others, which will seal those relationships and have others see you in a different light.
Okay, so let's say I don't get a lot of response to my LinkedIn invitations. What can I do to change that?
Well, as a general rule, if people aren't responding, it's because what the saying in face-to-face piece is if people don't seem interested, they don't find you interesting. And why don't they find you interesting? Because you're talking about you as opposed to them. So when it comes to online, whether it's online request to connect, if people aren't responding, they're going to where you live online, which is your profile, and they're not seeing a lot of value there. So it's probably necessary for you to revisit your profile and to realign the information there so that it does 3 things. The first thing it does is it speaks to your value. Secondly, it addresses the target markets that you do business with, and then it enhances the experience and expertise you have in that area. It's a marketing vehicle that is probably not strong enough.
Okay, here's a comment from Sue Ann, which ties in a little bit. She says, my number 1 to make networking worthwhile is be memorable. It's essential that connection, remember, make that interaction count, keep them interested during and intrigued enough to want to connect again. Examples: find a common connection point, tell an interesting sticky story, emphasize a quick win way that you can help them. Comment, Michael?
My response is, Sue Ann, all of that stuff is wonderful and great. The problem with most people when it comes to online stuff is they try and put all that into one communication. It's too much, too soon, too fast. And that's because when it comes to utilizing online communication, specifically on a social network, there's a relationship gap there. People think in terms when it's online, I want to do three things: connect, qualify, and close. And it doesn't work like that. So it's all about using less information in each communication and getting that response going back and forth. And the analogy I use is a pendulum, getting that pendulum swinging, because you and I both know that the real relationship building doesn't start until you can talk to the person live, right? Technology doesn't build relationships, people do.
Well said. It does take time. Trust doesn't happen overnight. I think part of your message, Michael, is to be more human, or let out a little bit more of yourself, be a little bit more. I mean, it's hard to open up. Sometimes you're like, oh, you know, how do I open up more to create more trust? I mean, it's a fine line, right? Sometimes.
My experience has been, for the most part, a person's profile has all the information you need to build a contextual connection with them. And it doesn't have to be something you have in common. It's demonstrating interest in what's important to them. And it's all about utilizing those exchanges, because it's if there's a weak link in that 5-step process that I share with you, the weak link is creating engagement. And that's because too often we think in terms of our own agenda. Because right, when you go see somebody's profile, you look at that profile and you say, I know how I can help them. So right away, you want to go in and have a discovery call with them. It doesn't work like that. You mentioned it, Craig. You said relationships take time, they need to be nurtured, and they require investment. And that starts off with a conversation. A conversation can happen online, written, using words. If you use the right word, if you have the right intention, and you put the attention on them.
We have a comment from Kim saying, Michael, I like how your definition of networking's true purpose leaves space for actively and intentionally brokering relationship between two other people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one of those things that happened to me over time, and then I got slapped in the face with it that said, this is really how this works. And nobody goes online, or nobody goes to a networking event to get sold to. It's a peer-to-peer connection network. And meeting someone is the ignition point of a relationship. It happens every single time. And it's our responsibility as professionals to manage that process. And there's a whole social process that I speak to. It's a methodology that I've developed that helps people understand how this all works. Excellent point. Thank you.
Michael, what do you say to people who are uncomfortable with having a camera on during virtual meetings?
It happens to all of us. And in reality, there are sometimes you may not want to have a camera on, because in the whole working from home thing, there could be things happening that you don't want to have happen. I mean, I had a meeting with an executive VP of a firm. He was from home, and he said, I'm not going to put my camera on because I'm babysitting my 5-month while my wife takes the other ones out. I said, you want to cancel? He said, no, we can do it. But he didn't have his camera on. Sometimes it just doesn't feel right. And I'm okay with that. I don't want anyone to think that I'm putting them in a position to make it more difficult for them. I just want to remind you of the impact and the importance that the visual piece does. People want to see you. They need to see you. They need to see your smile. They want to see you engaged. And it does nothing but help you look better, feel better, and project better.
Pierre's got an interesting question about communicating with people from different generations. Do you find that challenging? What are some notes that you might pass on about that?
Yeah, listen, it's all challenging, okay? It's all
well, yeah.
And the reality of someone at my level, which is a little further advanced than you and many of the people on the call, is that it's important to recognize, to be open and receptive, that these people have value. And my experience has been that if we look at these people and think in terms of the value they can have for us, with the knowledge they have, the difference of opinion they have, and the areas they have. I mean, I have incredible conversations with young entrepreneurs and professionals all the time. It's amazing. So it's all about us being as open and receptive about the demographics as we are about the vehicles that we're using to communicate.
Thank you, Michael. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here today as our guest speaker. I also want to thank CMC Ontario's events coordinator, Sandra Addison Brock, and all of our members who joined us today. Quick takeaways: the impact of the pandemic has moved us into networking 3.0. The use of technology for networking is not going away. The social process needs to be intentional, can be intentional. Have a plan for your relationship building, value and target market in your LinkedIn summary description. Connect, and then what? Well, find out, be curious. The relationship factor is essential to humankind. Use trust, value, contribution, and context. And from myself, remember hope for the new year. Hope springs eternal, whether it's in a poem by Alexander Pope or a song by the Sand Kings. Keep the hope alive, get out there, make new relationships for business, for real, be real. Cheers.
Thank you, Craig.